Hello everyone, Squiz here. Welcome back to the show. It's uh, it's fascinating for me to speak about the books. It's almost a journey of discovery because some of them were written about 10 years ago, and I haven't really looked at them since then. And with this series, I was forced to relook at the books. Of course, I had a major update about 3, 4 years ago. Nothing changed. The storyline will never change, but sometimes some events, especially from a political nature, is so old that it doesn't matter anymore. And uh, and also that if you find a spelling mistake or something, then of course you do actually rectify it. It's not a big deal to do that. It's easy. The problem we have when we write in English is, I mean, English is spoken in what 150 countries in the world, and you do get different types of English. I don't do the American English thing. It's more British, but not British either because it's actually South African English and we use slang, which some people just don't know. And sometimes, yeah, you know what you get is these people, they do love to spot a spelling mistake in your books and then they go on and on about it. It's a funny thing before you publish a book, of course, it's edited, not by yourself because you can't edit your own book. It's impossible. You will really read over the mistakes. So it's highly recommended that you actually get somebody else to do it. And you also use spell checkers, of course, as much as you can, as well as these language AI these days. You do all those things, but you don't rewrite a book in AI. I think that's cheating. I mean, but that's after my time. I will never do that. But anyway, to make a long story very short, your biggest problem actually when you write a book is the name. I often would write about 150, 200 pages before I know what's the name of a book. And then also so cover pages. If you're not a designer yourself, I mean, then it's quite hard to design a good cover page. Of course, again, I would say with AI these days, it should be a lot easier. And then if you're sort of broke, man, it's even worse because you don't really have money to pay somebody to do it. And probably the biggest mistake authors make is when once they have a book, they're so proud of it, and they should be, then they go and they find a publisher who is the biggest scum on earth. I mean, we have on our main show, Legacy Conversations, I have a very strict rule that unless I know the author and I like the man, normally I would never allow a book which is published by a publisher on my show. Because basically what I'm doing is I'm giving him a lot of exposure, giving a lot of publicity for free, which means that the publisher is just cashing in, not so much for author. If you've heard the absolute horror stories of how these publishers actually deal with people, it's amazing. It's amazing. The arrogance is as bad as that in Washington, and that says something. So, so my books have no great publisher behind them. In fact, I'm quite proud of it. I rejected the biggest publishers in the world twice, once under my own name and once under the name of George M. James. Where they wanted to change the manuscript, they would come with suggestions. But it's not really suggestions, it's more like you do what we tell you, or we will definitely not publish your book. Now, the scam is this: they will publish your book at a price. Unless you are very famous and you don't need them anyway, and they actually pay you like they do with people like Hilarious Clinton and others, which is just a way of bribe, it's just bribing. It's all it is. It's just a channel. I want to bribe, say, Hilarious Clinton. I just get her a book deal and I just pay a lot of millions into the publisher, and the publisher just funnels it towards where I want to be bribed. I use Clinton as an example, but it's not to say, of course, it is like that with her. I'm just using a name. But it is suspicious how rich they got, she and her husband, Billy Goat Clinton, after they left the White House, isn't it? Now, in any other country in the world, there's something called a lifestyle audit. Yes, yes. That's how they got, what's that gangster of Chicago, Al Pacino, or what's his name? I can't even remember now. But you know what I'm talking about. And that's how you get corrupt political people and military officers and who else. And that's actually a counter-terrorism investigation type of thing, because we always look at it. If you serve in any capacity in your secret services of your world, you will do a lie detector test at least once a year and probably more. And also, they will look at your financial status. If there's more money that there should be, or you live a lifestyle which you shouldn't, I mean, your fellow worker cannot afford to drive a new Mercedes S-Class. You just can't. Perhaps a 10-year-old one. You know what I mean? So where's that money coming from? And that's when the investigation starts. And of course, these people are very stupid. These politicians, they are really not clever people. So what they would do is they would put the money into a trust, which they hold through their family, normally the wife or a child or something. But yeah, you pick that up quite quickly. Of course, this is never done in the US, so that's why the country is as corrupt as shite. I mean, it's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. In fact, it ranks with Switzerland as one of the most corrupt in the world. Switzerland, Swineland, yeah, yeah. Why? Because they don't want to open their books. They don't want to show you, but they know. And of course, they have mates in the Western intelligence agencies because they're totally Western orientated. They're NATO orientated. That's why they joined the sanctions against Russia. And by doing that, they completely broke their neutrality, which they're so proud of, and they don't have to begin with. But that's one of their bullshit ways of talking. And of course, when it came time for negotiations between Ukraine, the Western puppet, and Russia, the one who was winning the war, then when they held it in Istanbul, wasn't it, in Turkey? And Turkey also, of course, is assisting both sides. But Turkey is one of the interesting countries you really have to look at, because if there's a Bible prophecy talking about the king of the north and the king of the south. And the king of the north is not Christian at all. He doesn't even pretend to be. And then there's a king of the south who attacks the king of the north and then gets his ass seriously beaten. And he looks Christian, but he ain't. Now, there's many ways of looking at this. Who is the countries involved actually? What do they mean? But there are people who say that actually the king of the north would be Turkey, the second largest army in NATO anyway, not in the world. Powerful country, very powerful military. And they were ones who actually exposed the German tanks, which everybody thought that the German tanks would be the greatest tanks in the world. And sadly, when they invaded Syria, before Syria came to a fall, their tanks got shot out quite easily. That was the first warning, and nobody took it seriously. And then what happened was, of course, the Ukrainians got from the Germans, they gave them a lot of their tanks, Leopards, what I'm talking about, the different Leopards, and they got shot out like the Abrams. Nothing, not a great tank at all. So interesting how these things work, but the prophecy say then that there will be some news which disturbs Turkey, which will come from Iran as well as from Russia. And because of that, and what the king of the south is doing, which they say is Israel, it will attack Turkey, and Turkey will smash them and actually occupy Jerusalem. They also say that once this is done, the end of probation. In other words, by that time, as the Bible says, you will be what you are. If you're Jesus, then you're going to stay in Jesus. If you're not, well, then you have a mark of a beast, and it's no use to cry afterwards. It's over. It is over. Now, guys, is this true? I don't know. I'm just telling you to have keep a watch on Turkey, see what they do. See what they do. It's very interesting, actually. But talking about covers, this cover was designed by a friend of mine, Solet, who's a great woman, and she helped me in the beginning. She helped me with designs, everything. I could really not afford to pay her. Later, my friend Elsa started designing, and then Rebecca arrived, and then Rebecca started designing. So this book I want to talk about is Codename Sanford. And on the cover you will find there's an old Rhodesian Air Force Huey, one of those two-bladed helicopters which became famous in Vietnam. Now, I'm not too sure, but I think we got 8 of them or 6. I'm not sure, but one of them was shot down. One of them crashed, and the rest I got rid of. I sold them after they became the Zimbabwean Air Force. So that's a story with the reason for the Huey. I wanted to put the Huey into a cover and into a story because it's a helicopter which fascinates me. It's got a very distinctive sound because it's only got 2 blades. And later, when we started speaking to special forces on legacy conversations, they didn't particularly like the Huey that much. And I also spoke to some of the pilots on legacy who didn't think of it much either. They preferred what they were used to, the French Puma, and then later which became the Oryx, which is a fantastic helicopter. It often features in my books. So anyway, Codename Sanford carries on where Codename Udet has ended. Now, remember Udet, and please have a look at the video and get hold of a book if you want. It's all about codes and ciphers and the warning that the Western intelligence is thoroughly penetrated by enemy agents. And also that the codes and ciphers are broken. We also looked at Snowden and what happened after he revealed his things. And how Al-Qaeda then suddenly had 5 new ciphers. Yeah. And of course, the information in that book is very old, so they have even better ones today. Fascinating, these things. We also looked at ISIS and the role they played with let's call it enemy or terrorist jihadi type of ciphers. They're not stupid, Many of the people are ex-military people, so they fully understand how it works. They were for religious reasons, fanatical, not fundamentalist anymore. They are totally now radical. And they still exist. Of course, they've taken over Syria. And they're murdering Christians and other non-Sunni Muslims all the time. And the West is silent. Yeah, silent. It is, of course, the West from the days of Obama who actually started this action against Syria. Why? Probably on behalf of Israel. Probably, almost certainly. There's no other logical reason. There's no other reason you can think about. Because the Syrian Arab army at one stage was quite a threat to Israel. They fought, I would say, 2 wars, if I'm not mistaken, which Israel won by the grace of America. And so, well, anyway, to make a long story short, times have changed. The Middle East is being rewritten as we speak. But let's stay away from the Middle East. Let's talk about Codename Sanford. As I say, it's taken over by, it carries on where Udet has stopped. Basically, in Udet also, Angelica, the mates, are flying an aircraft, and then this thing's engine skunks out. And she makes an emergency landing on the water. She's got a dislocated arm, quite a few bruises and cuts. Foxtrot 2, he refused to jump to safety. And so he went down with that aircraft. It is one of the constant themes in the books to come, where Foxtrot always refers to the time that she crashed the aircraft into the waves, which in fact she didn't. She was a hard landing, emergency landing, and the aircraft, lost a wing or two and whatever. But she did bring that aircraft down. She's a good pilot, superb pilot actually, and she did save Foxtrot there when the aircraft started sinking, which of course it will do. She's the one who actually was unconscious and basically picked him up and dragged him out. If you think that Foxtrot weighs at least 260 pounds of muscle. And that's a funny thing in the books. I've never ever described what Foxtrot actually looks like. You don't know the color of his eyes. You don't know the color of his hair, except it's grey. You don't know if he's got hair like me. Surely, guys, he's not based upon me. Really not. But right in the beginning, when the first book came out, the FO565, Soulette actually designed me a cover, which we used for a long time, and then we changed it because when Rebecca arrived, we thought it's better to get all the books to look in a certain way. So if you can look at the books, you will quickly see this is a GMJ book. It was like a trademark. And so we don't really know what Foxtrot looks like. He's just described as a big man. He's over 6 feet. He got arms like a gorilla, obviously. I mean, that man must have done thousands of push-ups in his life. He's a Special Forces officer, so very, very, and a big fellow. So she drags him out, and like she would also, of course, she's a fiery character, Angelique. She would just reminds him that she actually saved his ass that day, and that he was shouting like a girl before they actually landed or crashed. The truth to be told, if you read Courtney Mudette, is that Foxtrot, of course, is in love with Angelique very much. I mean, he's not really hiding it. In this book, it starts coming out. It's book 9, I think. It starts coming out. He starts showing his feelings towards her. Both of them are now have lost their wife and husband to death. Foxtrot was murdered, and I said to you before, it was based upon my own late wife. The first late wife was murdered in active duty, and then Angelique's husband died of cancer. That is revealed in Code Name Deborah. On why that fellow died on cancer is also very realistic. It's actually based upon a true story. And so Angelique is still playing hard to get, because she is a commanding officer. It's hard for Angelique to realize that she can be in a loving relationship with one of her agents. Especially when this agent is like a reluctant agent. He's helping her because of her dad. We admired. We used to be his commander at Special Forces. So it's an integrated love story, and it's a fun book to read. Sanford, it's a serious book, but a fun book to read, like most of them. Well, all of them, actually. Yeah, they do pull you in. They pull you into the story. I've had some feedback from readers, and I'll thank you for that. Whenever you give me feedback, I'm really grateful. Especially if you're kind. If you're not kind, then I just ban you. I don't want to talk to you. Then people say to me, well, because this is so fantastic. I really loved reading the story. I just couldn't stop reading it. That's what you want to hear as an author, man. That's what you want. And hopefully the messages you put in the back, like I've explained about codes being broken and slide X and everything in Mudette and other places, how I describe other things of importance. Then it's when that messages go through, when you feel even better about it. It's not about money, guys. Unless you are very famous, the chances of you making money out of your books is zero. I don't make more than after Uncle Sam, of course, takes his cut and Amazon takes his cut. And I don't think I make more than $40 a month out of my books. It's so little, it makes no difference to me. It makes absolutely no difference to me whatsoever. I don't care about the money. I don't write for money. That's why I rejected the big publishing houses, because they wanted to change the characters. They want to make Angelique with Or, the slot who opens the legs for everybody. Totally not a Christian woman, no values. And the rest of them would, of course, be American because, it's not possible that South African operators can be good, No. Well, whatever. I'm not going to start insulting again. I decided not to do it. So, let me always say to you this, I don't rate you highly either. I think very little of our units, military-wise and espionage-wise, and that includes Mossad. Mossad in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is my theatre or used to be, is actually quite pathetic. They're really not good. If But they're still a bit better than the US, and Western intelligence was really pathetic. They're really bad. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So while that aircraft was going down in Codename Udet, Foxtrot was actually praying. He was saying to the Lord, look, if somebody has to die today, take me. Let Angelique live. And she heard it. She does admit later, many years later, she admits that she actually heard that. Of course, the bloody woman, and that was true with the real Angelique and the mates as well, is they can read, lip read, So I think that's where I started talking the way I talk, because you try to, but they don't really know what you're thinking or saying, because they're very suspicious people. If they start thinking in any way that you are disloyal or you are planning to walk away, walk out of operations, or you're going to write many dozens of books, they might start joking about it for a while. And you will find Angelique in many of the books saying something like, yeah, Foxtrot, when are you going to write your book? Or, Foxtrot, even if you write your books, no one is going to believe you. There's a lot of jokes going on inside the books. Once you read a few books, you will pick up the jokes quite easily. It's of course not done by chance. Everything you read in the books are there because I want it to be there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. It's that simple. It's so with every book. Every author will put in his own views and own things and own everything. It's not a PhD you're writing, It's not a master's thesis. No, it's a book. So in other words, you are free to put in whatever you want within the scope of the law, of course. So anyway, there's a bit of a joke going on with that as well. But now, after they survived the crash, they dived down to the aircraft because she almost got the aircraft to the airport. It fell into the ocean not far away from the beach. And they dived down to it and they find explosives. And they realized that if they didn't crash, the explosives would have gone off and they would have been dead. So there was a bit of fate involved. And now Angelique's going after the fellow who she thinks has actually planned to murder her. So what happens then is that Angelique's inherited a bunch of teams, basically, which is created. In fact, Codename Sanford is the first book where the assassin teams are actually mentioned, and where they come to the fore, and where there's a female called One Alpha, who is later in a book codenamed One Alpha. Now, One Alpha existed, she died with the entire team. There's another woman who comes out in this book, Lemon Bomb, who also dies with the entire team later. It's not described in the books. I'm telling you a real life story of what happened to these people. Lemon Bomb was from the French spy agency, DGSE, which of course is actually Angelique's parent unit. And she did the commando training, the Sea Commando, naval commando training with Angelique. And so she would walk around with a tin of lemon balm and just, treat everybody with sore muscles and what have you. And she's got a bit of a strange relationship with the Foxtrot as well, because she just cannot understand, being a French woman, why the two of them are not, grabbing each other and just doing what people in love do with each other. It's called making the love. It's not sex. I think there's a difference between sex and making love. But I'm a romantic man actually. you're born as ugly as I, you have to be romantic. Otherwise, you don't have much to offer, you don't have a good looks of the guys who actually have good looks. And so you have to be able to speak and write poems and all these sorts of things, you have to be able to show some character. So she's always niggling Angelique now, have you done it yet? Or, she's typical French. And Foxtrot does not take kindly to this, and he doesn't trust her anyway. He knows there's something happening with this woman. And he knows that Angelique is protected by them. If Lemon Balm ever starts thinking that Angelique might be in danger, she will react. She will actually drop everything and go and protect Angelique. And that makes sense. That's the other thing I wanted to bring out to you in Codename Sanford is that, and it does come out in Codename Honeybee as well, is that if you have a high-ranking influential agent in a different agency, and the Mossad is actually very good at this, you will do everything to boost that person's career, even to the point where you will feed them information, true intelligence, to make them a superstar in that agency so that they can be promoted. That's what they did with Kim Philby as well, the KGB now, not Mossad. So very, very fascinating. So they know that Angelique's the best friend they have in Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, why is Sub-Saharan Africa important? I've explained this in other books here as well. Sub-Saharan Africa is where you find most of the jihadis today. Why? Because they got chased out of Pakistan, they got chased out of the Middle East. Of course, they can move back to Syria now, they probably will. But they started preparing for that, they saw it coming. And so they moved out to Africa, which is easy. If you have some money, you have dollars, and they have unlimited dollars with their ransoms. I think the largest ransom ever paid, and I speak on a correction, you have to look at my hostage survival course, which I lectures, 8 or 7 lectures, which I made. Might save your life, so go and look at it if you can. Take you all day, by the way. Each is an hour and more long. And most of what I said there comes out of the books and what I've seen, of course. But the biggest ransom ever paid, I think, was a Qatari royal family, or one of the royal families in the Middle East. They paid, I think, $1 billion. And then, of course, there's Saudi money and there's the ransom money of the Western captures those hostages. So they're really well funded. That's the other thing about these terrorists. They're really well funded. And so you can look at their bank accounts, actually. That's what happened with those who blew up for 9/11. Afterwards, a method was established where you can see the way they spent their money on when they're going to die. Because these people have no reason to keep $20,000, $30,000 in their accounts. So the last weeks before they're going on the mission, which will end in death or in jail, they just spent all the money. On what do they spend it? Whorehouses, of course, prostitution, drugs, even though I have to say that the terrorists don't really like druggies. They don't like people who's on drugs that much. I'm not talking about something which is a traditional drug, almost like hashish or weed, for them anyway. I'm talking about people on hard drugs because they, in the first place, have a problem with it from a religious viewpoint. Secondly, if you're a terrorist, you still need to follow orders. So if you don't follow orders, well, they don't want you. It is a military type of structure, not as smart on parade as you would be or would have been, but they do have their own ways of doing things. So they're well funded. So for them, it's quite easy to move into Africa, get a piece of property, start a mosque with money from Saudi. Yes, of course. Get the imams in, which are very radical, but fantastically good operators, humble people. Read or listen to Codename Wednesday 7, where we actually meet one of them and discuss, how they twist the Quran around. Very interesting how they operate. They're actually quite sophisticated, a lot more than what you think, because you would see the foot soldier, the rebel there with his sandals and his AK. Just remember that rebel defeated, according to you anyway, the Soviet Union, as well as, of course, according to me, the entire NATO, including the US and the coalition Hamas, who all got defeated in Iraq as well as in Afghanistan. And in Africa, it's a matter of time before they run away from here as well. I'm not going to again talk about Africa Command because every time I talk about it, I get worked up. Let me say to you, they're a shameful, pathetic organization based in Germany, not even in Africa. They know absolutely fuck all and they just cause shite wherever they go. And they are murdering and they are murdering people left, right, and center. They're causing even more trouble, more harm. It's just pathetic to witness. It's pathetic. There is no other word. I would actually say to you that things were fairly under control before they arrived, and now it's totally out of control. Yeah, so anyway, so that is why Sub-Saharan Africa is so important, and that's why you find US Special Forces here are shame. And that's why you find a lot of Western intelligence agencies here are shame. And they don't really know what they're doing. They have no clue what they're doing. And then, of course, there's the Muslim truce, which I might make an episode on itself. I'm not going to explain it to you again. You have to read my books to understand what the Muslim truce is and why South Africa is not being attacked by a jihadi group. It's not impossible that it can happen, but it's unlikely. But of course, I don't know the future, guys. Of course, it can happen. But anyway, in Odette, they find these explosives. On the aircraft, they dive down, they found the explosives. Other things happen on the water as well. Remember, Angelique's there's only one arm working now because it's was dislocated and got other injuries. So Foxtrot just tied the arm against a chest. You don't need your arms to swim, actually, but Navy SEALs proved that. And she dives down with Hillsong, the other character was always there. And down there they meet some people and whatever, they got the explosives out. And now Angelique is on the warpath, and now we are on codename Sanford. So in Sanford, they start proceedings by having an exercise. They've got the new assassin groups, which just been created, and they've just been trained in Iran, of all places, which means that they are indoctrinated in the wrong way. Look, it doesn't matter. I said this to you before. It doesn't matter if a guy like Barack Obama is actually a secret Muslim. I don't know if he is or isn't, but he was definitely at Madras schools as a youth, and it must have had an influence on him. And I think his father was actually a Muslim as well. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't also really matter if Donald Trump, who says he's Christian, but actually is to be found kneeling in a Catholic church, which of course not Christian, it's sun worshipping. And he's married to a very dedicated religious Catholic woman. Yeah. Also, the High Court judges of the US High Court, Supreme Court, virtually every single one of them are what? What do I hear? Catholics? Yeah. I think there might be one Jew, but I'm not even sure about that. But most of them actually are Catholics. It's not by chance, it's really not by chance. And if you look at the decisions they make, you can clearly see the Catholic influence. And that is the point, guys. Because the moment you start taking your religious views into your unit, into your service, into your court, into your government, into your presidency, it means that the separation between church and state is what? Is gone. Did the Bible not say that will happen? Yes. What does that mean? Well, in modern times, look at Saudi Arabia, who flog people to death, who crucify people, who chop their heads off, who abuses women, gays, lesbians, whatever. Fantastically horrible society, that actually. And brutal. Why? Because they have Sharia law. And Sharia law is a Muslim law. So in other words, they mix state and church, or state and mosque. You see where this is going. That is why we're so anti it. And that's also where you find the blue laws, the Sunday laws, which are now coming out, which is in virtually in place in most European countries. Swineland was one of them. Germany, definitely, as well as I think Austria. Yeah, that place. And that means that it's like the old South Africa on a Sunday, nothing is open. Now, it's fascinating that the day they want us to be off once a week, they will never mention to you this is religious and it's got to do with a Sunday worship, which is a mark of a beast. Go and read Oath of Evil. Go and read or listen to Professor Rebaif on his Total Onslaught series. And go and research. I mean, I've explained this before. I'm not going to explain it to you again. Oath of Evil, that's a book which will explain totally the mark of the beast for you. And it will explain to you how the Sabbath day, the fourth commandment of God, has always, traditionally, always been kept from a Friday night to a Saturday night. And the new people talk about the Jewish Sabbath. No, this comes from Genesis, 600 years before Abraham, before the Jews actually existed. Yeah. This is a direct commandment of God. And then the Catholic Church came and they said, no, we got to make it the Lord's Day. And we got to make it on the day of a sun, of a venerable sun. Yeah, sun God. That's what it is. That's what it is. You know, the occult always working in black and white. So what you think is white is black, and what's black is white. So in other words, it might look innocent to you to say, well, okay, it's just a day. Let's go to church on a Sunday. Yeah? But your Lord God, who you say you love, but not keep his commandments, I wonder why. Just because some asshole of a human being pretending to be Christ on earth. You know, the Antichrist has told you to do that 1,000 years ago. And he overrides God's law, just like that. Huh? Yeah, fascinating. And he'll, of course, come out and say everything was, you know, the cross. It died on the cross. There's no law anymore. Yeah, okay. So why don't you go and rape your sister? Why don't you go and kill your boss? There's no law. There's no law. Who says there's no law? Did God not say that you will not change one little bit of my word? And did God not say keep my commandments? Did he not say that? So yeah, there's no excuse, guys. You know, if I go on about the Sabbath day, don't get angry with me. It's a serious matter. It is the mark of a beast. And since it's a mark of a beast, and you know it's a mark of a beast, and you still carry on doing it, well, it's going to have serious consequences for you, isn't it? There is, in fact, only one church in the world, do you know that? The Seventh-day Adventist, who complies with every single rule or law in the book, in the Bible. From Sabbath day worship to the Bible and the Bible alone and a lot more. Yeah. Yet you call us a sect. All 22 million of us and another 40 billion was on the side. The biggest Protestant church in the world. You know that. You know they have their own universities, own hospitals. Do you know that? You don't forget the other day I got ill. I had the most terrible flu. Well, it's now 6 months ago because you're only seeing this in January. And it's 1st of July almost now. And normally I would go to a private hospital called Bangkok Hospital and I was treated very well there. This time I found out, there's a Seventh-day Adventist, a private hospital here. Let me go there. And I went there. And the entire Phuket is there, every single one. Man, that place is exceedingly busy. Where the other hospital is almost empty because it's expensive. And not a lot of Thai people there. You go to the mission hospital, you find it's flooded with Thai people. Why? Because it's affordable and it is good. It is really, really good. So my advice to you is if you're ever in Africa or someplace, you need medical assistance, don't go to a Catholic hospital. They might kill you. Hopefully not, but they might. Go to the Seventh-day Hospital, man. I can testify for you. I went there. I was seeing a doctor within 45 minutes of sitting around there. They gave me my medicines. They explained everything to me in proper English. They were very careful. They asked more than once, are you allergic to anything, sir? This is how you drink it. Do you understand? Cup? Yes, I understand. No problem. And then I left. And the medicines worked, and within a few days I was over it, and I will really never ever go back to a different hospital. I've learned my lesson. But anyway, it seems like that these assassins of Angelique still had to learn their lesson because they were trained in Iran, and some of them are Muslim. Half of those things, actually, you have to read Codename Crocodile, where I explain a lot more of the assassins and where they come from and how they fit together and how they changed from my time to what they are today, because they still exist. And now they've become good. But in the beginning, they were way too radical, and they didn't like the idea of a Christian women like Angelique being in command of them, and she frankly didn't like them either. But she's professional, you know. They are her. She was the first commander, so she will always care about them. And through the books, you'll see where they increase in stature and they increase in capability tremendously. So that at some stage in the later books, you'll see them actually conducting fantastic operations by themselves. And we'll still talk about that as well. But at this stage, the very first book where they appear, Angelique wants to know how good they are. Because she sort of inherited it. She didn't ask for them, she inherited it. And they're looking at her with evolution as well, because they have suspicion, some of them anyway, that there's something wrong with Angelique Dawson, that she might not be who she says she is. And they're quite right. She ain't. She's a spy. She's a penetration agent. She works for France, even though she's so high in the ranks in South Africa. Was that with a real one too? Yeah. But the South Africans didn't play a role. I just put it here in the books. And anyway, to make a long story short, they take off with these Huey helicopter, and they're going to conduct an exercise. And then, typical of these exercises, it happened with me as well. You just land, you storm the place, or you abseil down, or whatever. You conduct the exercise. Now you're very happy. You've done what you had to do. You got the guy you rescued. And now you're in the helicopter. You're flying back, man. It's high fives. You're happy now. Yeah. Then what happens is the helicopter suddenly lands and the pilot says to you, Oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, but we shot down and I'm dead. So you people are on the run now. Piss off and goodbye. I'll go and have a beer in heaven. Then he takes off and leave you standing there. It is back at base within an hour or 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He's having his cold beer and you on the run. Now that word on the run has a very, very specific meaning in special forces as also in the shadow world. It means there's people chasing you. It means if they're going to get hold of you, even in an exercise, man, they're going to work you. They're going to do things to you. And if they catch you for real, well, see what happened to Lucy. Listen to the story which I told about Lucy, the counterterrorism agent who was captured by a warlord in code names Green 41 and code name Celery 50 and other books. Yeah, so you better not be you better run that. So you're gonna run. And it takes immense physical fitness, and it takes a lot of you need to navigate, you need to move, you need to keep on moving. So this is exactly what happens, because Angelique wants to snatch. She wants to actually capture and snatch and interrogate the ringleader, who she thinks is the one who was trying to kill her, because they come from that team. It's, of course, for Foxtrot, being in love with Angelique and having her surrounded with a team from which actually they tried to kill her already. And they have live ammunition with them, and it's only him and Gelsong there to actually protect her. You can imagine the worry. I mean, he's worried about it. Of course, Angelique can defend herself, but she's only got one arm. So you see where this is going. So anyway, so what they did is, now I'm going to tell you how they did it, but they do actually snatch this guy without the rest of the team knowing they did it. And during interrogation, he reveals a few things, and now they move off to Botswana. Now, it's the only book which actually plays off in the Okavango Delta, because Botswana isn't really a place which has terrorism problems. Not really, touch wood at this stage. And by that I mean jihadi. Simply because we have a good police force and they still have a gallows. You start making your shite there, they will hang you. Yeah, they will hang you. And it's a stable country and it's a rich country. And it is well run. It's one of the success stories of Africa. I think about the only one. And also, I think Namibia can get close now, but a lot of people say to me there's also trouble there now, breeding. But of course, Botswana in the old days had a few problems with the South African special forces where things went boom. And they most certainly are going to have trouble with South Africa again in the future because they're too close to that second beast. What's that second beast called? America. Yeah. They're very close to the US military. So they have these combined operations. I actually witnessed a few of them. And back when I was still in the police, I also saw them move. I think with the British SAS, I did a patrol past me. I was lying observing them. And they didn't spot me, and I was frankly not impressed at all. They were moving way too quickly. They were too noisy. And you could see the white guys standing out would have been the first target. The shooting broke out, they were killed him first. Of course, I'm just speculating. I don't know if it's SAS or not, but it was back in 1989, late 89. Yeah, just 90. It went over to 1990, just before Mandela was released. That's when I witnessed that. And we also know, of course, that there is quite a big airbase just next to Gaborone, which the US also have parts of. They actually lengthened it, as far as I know. And we do believe that if the US ever wants to attack South Africa, that's where they will do their build up. That's where they will reinforce and then they will come down south. They will also, of course, blockade Cape Town, Durban, Port Elizabeth with their carrier fleets. Yeah. We know about these things. Go and read Codename Wells Choice and see what the Chinese has done to counter it in Zimbabwe. They can also come down south. And I guarantee you, I know you people look down on the South African Army. I know you do. You look down on the South African National Defence Force. I don't. I really don't. I think they can get their act out, and sometimes they do. And let me tell you, if you start building up your forces there, you've got every chance in the book. US, I'm talking to you now. Yes, second beast, you people. Build up your forces like that next to South Africa and see what we do with you in a preemptive strike. Yeah. And we're not Iran. We're not going to stop after 12 days just because you start begging that you can't take it anymore. Israel, we know you were begging. It's sad to see that. You know, I never thought I would ever see that in my life. Never. And yet that's what all the evidence is actually telling us. That's what happened. So anyway, so we know Botswana quite well. It is take out there are egg breakers in it. And the idea now is in Codename Sanford is that Angelique wants to basically assassinate those rogue team members who were trying to kill her. So she has to set them up, and so she is setting them up. And I don't want to give a book away too much. You have to read it yourself. They at one stage they are flying with an aircraft. I think it's King Air or something. We're flying with this King Air towards Botswana, and immediately something breaks out because as they load the baggage, they noted that the tail number is 1188, and both Gilslong and Foxtrot are most unhappy about this tail number, and Angelique, of course, wants to know what the hell is wrong with him. It doesn't matter. But in fact, in poker, that number 1188 is seen as the number of death. It's a dead man's hand. And that is the cards which Bill Hickok, Wild Bill Hickok, held when he was assassinated. He was basically shot from behind in his head in 1976. I don't know how many of you people know that, so that's why I just explain it there. And in fact, the cards he had was double aces and 88. But you can say that if an A is in the first in the cipher or in a code, and it's 1-1. So that's how they got to that. And he died in a town called Piet. Oh, interesting, interesting. Just one of the things which comes out in the book. As I said, I don't really want to give a story too much away, but at some stage they realized that this aircraft they're traveling in, this is a bit later now, but Angelique and Foxtrot is in that aircraft. They realize that there's a bomb aboard, and if they go below 8,000 feet, it will actually explode. Now, that's not an uncommon technique. If you know how to make bombs and you have certain fuses, yeah, you can do that. But Angelique wants to die. In the sense, she wants them to think that she actually died. So she has no problem with the aircraft exploding. The damn problem is she and Foxtrot is on the aircraft. So obviously the answer is you have to jump out of it. But the parachute they have, one of the parachutes are defective. It's not really working that well. So they decide to do a tandem jump. Now the problem here is, and Foxtrot doesn't reveal this for quite a while, is that several books later, I think, well, he might be in this book, I'm not sure, but it's mentioned in many books, is that he's never done a tandem jump before. And Angelique probably would know how to do it, but since he's so much smaller, normally you put the smallest person is the one hanging in front of you. So what they did is they would do a tandem jump with Foxtrot, steering and, controlling the parachute while Angelique's just hanging there. Now, years later, when I spoke to the people on Legacy Conversations, I think of RSM James Tytger as well as Brigadier General Bowman from Boris, as we call him, Special Forces Commander. Then it came out that Special Forces actually do tandem jumps quite often, where Boris himself has done more than 50 such jumps. RSM Tytger, like very, very good at this. He's actually a internationally known parachutist doing all the sport jumping, things like that. And wonderful people. And so they described this, but for some reason, Foxtrot was not trained in this. Today they would be. Where else has this happened? It happens often, when that Captain Phillips, when that ship was hijacked, the Navy SEALs jumped into the water, and they actually did well in that operation. And they had a translator or something who could speak the local language, and he jumped a tandem jump out of the aircraft into the ocean with one of the SEALs. Because these days you also have dogs, explosive dogs and things like that jumping with you. But that's not new. That happened in the old South Africa already. That's not new. So anyway, they do this tandem jump. It's something which comes out in many, many of the books. And then they meet up with the French. Now, you can imagine that the people, the ones who wants to kill her would have heard that this aircraft has actually crashed because she's put it on autopilot before they jump. So at some stage, a few kilometers further, this thing goes below 8,000 feet and boom, it goes. But with a person like Angelique, you cannot really take for granted that she actually died. You have to actually make sure she died. You have to visit the scene. You actually have to go to the wreckage of this King Air and make sure that she's dead, that she's corpse is there. That's a problem which we have with Western intelligence and Western special forces. And we've seen it now 6 months ago when you're listening here, but only a week or two since talking here. The strike of the US on Iran, on the nuclear facilities, which was a complete failure. Failure, I say you can spin it as much as you want. It's a failure. And they don't have people there to actually investigate. So Mossad came out and said, no, they had people there, they saw it. Yeah. You forget about the satellites, mate. You forget that Russian and Chinese and even in other countries, satellites can pick up quite clearly what damage you've done, and you've done fuck all. Below ground, nothing. Those things are still intact, which means you'll have to go back. So you can bullshit yourself. I don't quite understand it, to be honest. I mean, if you're bullshitting yourself and you're bullshitting your people, it's in the first place a weak person who would do that. But secondly, it doesn't change anything, does it? The heart of the matter is still it's not damaged. It's still intact. The nuclear weapons program doesn't exist, still exists. It's confusing. But anyway, whatever. So they don't have people who can actually witness these strikes and actually pick up DNA samples or whatever. The Israelis can do it. They often did it in the old days. These days, of course, they don't have to because they moved in with the Air Force and Army and just, shoot everything in sight. It's just yesterday a report came out. It's on the TV series where they say that they make no attempts of crowd disbursements, no tear gas, no birdshot, nothing like that. No. People arrive in a crowd to collect food in Gaza. They just shoot them with sharp point ammunition and kill them. Yeah. It's like that. Of course, you will say to me, propaganda. No, it comes from your own army, mate. It comes from your own IDF. But you know what? It fits in perfectly with what we are observing from the outside. Your people have gone out of control. I'm sad to say that. You've gone out of control, and that's why the entire world now hates you. I don't hate you. I say this with sadness. It's deep sadness for me to see your fell from grace. It's like seeing a person you love go on drugs. It's like that. That's like it is for me. And you better get your act sorted out because it's gonna have comebacks which you don't like. But anyway, so they suspected this rogue assassins will move to go and see where's Angelique's body. And so they're waiting in ambush. And by this time they took hands and have Lemon-Bomb's French team with him. Now, Lemon-Bomb's team would all of them would be ex-Foreign Legion or Army Special Forces or Naval Special Forces. I know there's a lot of you who think of the French army as in terms of Dunkirk, and then you attach the blame to the French army instead of yourself. Yeah, you Brits, you who ran away, who never came back until 1944, despite promising you'll come back immediately. You never did. No. You ran away so quickly. Go and listen to what I say in Codename Caribbean or read Codename Caribbean and find out your lack of losses in the Second World War. Yeah, why is that? I think more German civilians died on the bombing raids than actually the entire British Army lost in the entire war. In fact, I think France lost about 3 times more men in that 6 weeks of 1940 with the Blitzkrieg. And the British Army lost in the entire war, 6 years. Yeah. Why? Because you weren't fighting. That's why. You were not fighting. So don't come with shite to me. I actually know history. You don't. And I don't fall for your Churchillian tricks or whatever. No, I know the real statistics. And let me explain also to you, and I say this often in the books, and it has changed since then. France is now kicked out of the Sahel in Western Africa for political reasons and a large amount of Russian and Chinese influence also. That's what happened in the background. But at this stage, France is still very highly respected. And I'm still highly respecting France in covert operations, simply because they don't hesitate. They're not pussyfooting around. They're not, let's think about it. No, they just go and do the job. And they do it well. They're not like the US. They don't kill innocents. They just move in and they just get the job done and they move. As I say in the books, you wake up and the Legion is there to cut your balls off. And they will. Let there be no doubt. These are good fighters. They're really, really good fighters. So there's no doubt that if this rogue unit, assassin unit, walk to that aircraft, they are definitely going to be wiped out. And that's how it works in that world. If you turn on your commander and you try to murder her and you don't succeed, they take for granted you're going to come back. And then they're going to strike first. It's a South African way. We always strike first. That's what we do. We don't wait to be attacked. The Israelis used to be like that as well, but they lost their finesse somehow. They broken. It's a broken army, as far as I'm concerned. And the US, well, you'll have to go back and bomb Iran again. Yeah, yeah. And guess what's going to happen then, Trump? Let me explain to you, Daddy. Let me explain to you. You might run into Chinese and Russian air defenses this time. Be prepared for your shutdown crews to be paraded in Tehran. But you know what's sad about it? Jerusalem, Washington. You know what's sad about what I just said? The entire world, except for you two and a few of your Hamas in NATO, is gonna clap hands. They're gonna cheer. They're gonna say, well done, Iran. Let's kill more of you. Let's kill more Americans. Let's kill more Jews. Truly, we live in sad times, guys. We live in sad times, but luckily, there's still hope. There's always hope. So anyway, that's Codename Sandford. It's a fantastic story. It's a really good story. It's out of a box thinking. There's a lot of technical stuff in it, especially with blowing up aircraft. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book again. Thoroughly enjoyed writing it. As I say, that is where Angelique actually starts looking at Foxtrot and thinking, yeah, well, perhaps he's not an overgrown baboon or something, and perhaps his ways in protecting her is endearing in some way, and perhaps, there's a future for them. And from there on, it builds up until you get to Codename VFO 565, where they actually get married. Of course, VFO 565 was the first book written, but it's by far not the first book in the series in time. It's actually quite late. It comes after Snake 606, which was published as the other day, Snake 606. Anyway, book's available in Amazon. It's available in hardcover, softcover, as well as audio, as well as in Kindle. Not explaining again why it's not an EPUB. I will not support Apple ever. It's a terrorist organization. Refused to help the FBI with investigations, despite a court order to do so. So you know what? If you. As I say, guys, when you don't have much book sales and it doesn't matter, and you don't care about the money, it's actually there's a lot of freedom in that, because you have zero expectations. You don't really care. You can be your own man almost. You can do it your own way. So I thank God for that too. I'm grateful that it worked out like that. Having said that, I would also be grateful if a lot of people actually read the books, because they're worth reading. There's a lot of things to learn in it. There's a lot of things you didn't know. There's a lot of history in it which people just don't know. But anyway, that's a book, and the book after that I think we spoke about before, Codename Honeybee. So I'm not sure which one we're going to talk about next, but that's tomorrow's problem. I've got work to do now. Probably go to the beach at Phuket. If you people are ever in Phuket or in Patong Beach, always welcome to visit me. Always have time for you. And God bless until we meet again.